Hi, I'm Arys. I also go by Arys Dejan. Dejan is my middle name, and I use that as my artistic moniker, I guess. So, as you all know, I am the creator, host, and producer of the Who and How Club podcast. But it isn't just a podcast; it's also an event series and a blog and a movement. And I have big plans for it. One of those plans were to sort of bring the event series component to a higher level, which I began doing right at the beginning of the pandemic before everything kind of shut down. And I had my own residency at a venue in the city, and I was running and hosting, curating bi-weekly events that brought people together in one room to have in-depth conversations, people who don't even know each other. They were all strangers. And I was just curating these in-depth conversations about random topics and sort of teaching people how to express themselves through creative writing exercises, poetry, and it was really deep. There were some sessions where people were crying. I was crying even, and it was a great place for people to come and just be themselves and to express themselves freely. But lo and behold, the pandemic hit, and we had to shut all events down. And as the weeks progressed during the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't even know how big of a thing this was going to be. We didn't call it a pandemic as of yet at that time. We thought, as the weeks progressed, we'll get back to the events and people will be okay. We'll shut down for 2 weeks. We'll be open by week 4. Then month 1 passed, month 2 passed, and it's like, okay, this is indefinite. So the event series component to my movement it came to a halt. And obviously we couldn't do any in-person events, and I'm a bit against online events, because an event like mine that I created, you need that in-person component so that you could feel the energy amongst the people you don't even know. That's what the Who and How Club represents: who you are and how you became who you are. And we speak to strangers all the time, answering questions like, who are you, and how did you become the you that you are today? So yeah, you fast forward to 2021, and things are opening back up in the city. So the goal is to find a new residency. The old residency, they ended up selling their business and selling their venue, so it's owned by somebody else. It's a restaurant now, so I don't think going back there would be an option for us, but I think everything happens for a reason. So I'll be connecting with some new venues in the upcoming weeks to hopefully get the event series component of the Who and How Club back up and running. When I started the podcast, it was really, again, just to provide a platform for people to share pieces of their stories. And people intrigue me. And I like to know what makes them make the decisions that they make, what their stories and journeys are really like, because if we look at famous people even, let's just say a famous rapper, he shows up tomorrow, or she shows up tomorrow, pops up in front of us, and we like their music, we like their style, we want to emulate them, but we don't even know their journey. We don't know what it took for them to get to the point that we're seeing them at. So the show represents that journey that we all go through, because we're all experiencing this common thing called life. So if we just have a sit down with one another, we could actually learn from one another, pick each other's brains on certain perspectives, our personal experiences, and try to find some similarities in that, so we can learn from one another and figure out what our future selves will look like after that conversation. So the podcast, a main goal of mine and a milestone of mine was always to get to episode 50, because anything prior to 50, there were a lot of accomplishments made prior to 50, episode 50, and I felt like, wow, if I could accomplish these things and not even be at my 50th episode, imagine what I can accomplish if I just keep going. And some of those accomplishments were being nominated for the Quill Podcast Awards, being nominated for Best Branded Podcast, and that was a major accomplishment because it felt like everything I had planned around my podcast, it worked. You know, creating the logo and setting up a website and just the brand. You know, I set it up. I didn't know I never thought I would ever be nominated for Best Branded, but in hindsight, it's like I set myself up for that, and I pat myself on the back for that. I'm grateful for everyone who has supported the show and the brand. You know what I mean? So, and what it represents. Now that I've reached that 50th episode milestone, you know, I'm planning on bigger things like getting the show onto the network, turning the Who and How Club concept into a non-for-profit where, you know, where the Who and How Club is sort of like the banner and the umbrella, and underneath that we're running programs for young people in the city, teaching them how to know themselves, know pieces of themselves, and express themselves through different art forms, whether it's conversation, because that is an art form, a lost art form, in fact. Just being able to converse with another individual, or especially someone you don't know, and finding yourself through that, and expressing yourself through creative writing, poetry, music, and even podcasting. Another goal of mine is to create a how-to book in 5 steps on how to podcast, because with all this knowledge that I've gained, I don't want to keep it to myself. I want to share it with people, because a lot of the times people that I come across, they're like, you know, how did you get nominated for this in such a short period of time? How do you have so many listeners and downloads of your show? How did you get sponsorship? And having individual conversations, it might be daunting, but I think if I put a piece of art out that will sort of detail my framework, you know, and my step-by-step on how I did it, someone will be able to take that information and learn and pursue and use the same skills the same tools that I use to get where I'm at today. So yeah.